Hi, so in this tutorial we'll be talking about compression in a lot more detail. So in the last tutorial we talked about just dynamic processes as a whole, so compression, limiting, expanding, and gating. And the fact that the most important part about compression is knowing, or any dynamic process, is why you're actually putting it on there. So I just want to go through the parameters, how they work, and then in the next video we'll start going through applications. And for those applications, I'll be going through those applications within a song context rather than on their own. So let's start. So here we have the threshold. So when the audio goes above the threshold, you can see here as well. I chose to use trash because of the meters. It's got 3 meters here, so uh, it's more easily explained in trash in the dynamics module. So here you have the threshold. So when the audio goes above the threshold, the compression starts being applied. And here's the ratio. So at the moment, there's no compression being applied because it's 1 to 1. So one for every dB outputted, there's 1 outputted. So nothing's being applied. So that's why this line has stayed uniform. And then you compress it. So for every 3.1 dB outputted, 1 is outputted. So that's the gain reduction here, that we're losing gain above this threshold. So you can see, I'm gonna move the threshold. So when the audio goes above here, it'll start compressing. So it'll be more noticeable the lower threshold you go down. Like you'll hear the compression effect a lot more, which we'll go through in a sec. So yeah, so we lose gain reduction here. So sorry, we lose gain here, and then you'll see it on this meter. So what does that mean? That means we've got room to turn it up if we want to. That's just one application. But the thing is, if you go too far with the compression, you can really destroy the sound, and you can just drain the life out of it. So the point of compression is to reduce the dynamic range. So here it brings, so this is downward compression. So it squashes the higher dynamics downwards towards the lower dynamics. That's downwards compression. We'll go in, and upwards compression is bringing the lower dynamics closer to the higher dynamics. But we'll go into that later, so just keep that in mind for now. Then we have the attack here. So when the audio goes above the threshold, it starts compressing 10 milliseconds or whatever you set it to after the audio goes above the threshold. So a reason why you may want to have this like quite high is so that if you've got a kick and you want the transient to go through and you just want to compress the body of it, the compressor will start compressing after the transient has already like played. So that's one reason. But like I said, we'll be going through applications like there's 7 applications. We'll go through in 7 more videos on how compression is used, and we'll also be going through these individual parameters for each application. So don't worry if you don't understand now. And then release. So when the audio goes below the threshold, the gain reduction starts going back to 0. So we start going back to the original level. So basically, when the audio goes below here, it's still compressing for 100 milliseconds, and it goes back to uniform. So that it'll be like that. So yeah, they're all the functions here. Then we've got sidechain, but we'll go into sidechain when I go through one of the applications. So let's just do an example. So I'll play this this drum loop here. And let's just bring it back. Oh, let's loop it. This is the threshold. So I'm literally just demonstrating how a compressor works, because you don't really know if this will work in a song context. So that's why I'm saving those different applications for the next few videos. Like, you'll hear the effects of compression, but you don't know whether it will work. So I'm just demonstrating the different parameters just for the first video. So here, the threshold, that's when it'll start compressing here, but it's not compressing yet because the ratio is 1:1. And the red line here, you'll see that moving downwards when we start compressing. So let's turn the ratio up. So as you can see, we're just getting the higher dynamics of the sound. So like I said earlier, it's about bringing the high dynamics towards the lower dynamics. So let's A/B it. So the thing I'm picking up here is that it's very obvious that we're losing dynamic range, because those louder dynamics are coming down towards the lower dynamics, and the kick and snare are a lot louder without compression on. So we turn it on. You see those high dynamics are coming down. And it's only compressing on the kick and the snare because the percussion is well below the threshold. Try and listen out for it. The percussion. So let's try and bring in the transient a bit more. So now you're starting to see the red line kind of shift towards the right to make room for the transient. Alright, really listen to the transient now. I'm gonna just reset this back to 10 milliseconds halfway through. See, now you really hear the compression effect, because it's compressing as soon as it goes above the threshold here. So I actually like it at 200, so let's bring it back to 200. And like I said earlier, the reason why I like this compressor is because you can see the meters. So especially with this meter here, you can also see how the attack and release is working. Also with the red line here, you can see how the attack and release is working. So I'm thinking, why don't we... So some of the kick, you can see the lower dynamics of the kick here. They're actually falling below the threshold, so let's turn the release up just to catch more of it. So now it sounds, we can hear a lot more of the body. And with this meter, it's really easy to see if we're affecting other elements. So here you can see the percussion here is being slightly affected by the gain reduction. So let's turn that down a bit. There we go. It's no longer affecting it. Alright, let's A/B it again. So we're hearing that compression effect a lot more because it's releasing for a lot longer, or for an extra 40 milliseconds longer. So while we're on the topic of compression, let's talk about limiting. So limiting is when you set the threshold and then basically zero, basically the higher dynamics are just completely cut off. So let's give an example. I'll just blend it in. And then you can see how the gain reduction starts being applied. Right, that's a bit too heavy. So let's turn it back up again. So when limiting, I only use it just to catch the top of the transients within a whole group. That's what I tend to do, but we'll be going through that in a later tutorial on how you might want to use limiting. So like I said earlier, there are 7 applications. I'll just name them really briefly. So one application would be turning up louder. So here we lost gain reduction. Wait, there was a lot of gain reduction here. And what does that mean? That means we can turn it up. We can make up for that gain lost. This is called like the makeup gain here. But you need to be really careful, because if you compress it too much and then you make up for the gain lost, it'll just sound horrible. Unless that's what you're going for, unless that sounds part of the genre. That really heavy compressed sound. So a lot of the heavy electronic genres would have very compressed signal. See how plus 2 dB made it so much louder? So you can really like bring things really forward in the mix. So that's another application. So making things louder, and as well as like bringing them forward in the mix, because there's less dynamic range, it will consistently stay forward in the mix. Because if it's quite dynamic, your sound, so say the percussion, since the percussion is quite quiet, compressing it, bringing the higher dynamics towards the lower dynamics, and then turn it up for the amount of gain lost. Like it's a lot more consistency in the sound, so it stays like very similar levels. And turning that up will bring it forward, but also keep it consistently forward in the mix because of those lower dynamics being brought up. So I don't want to dive down into too many of the applications, so I'll leave the tutorial here, and in the next tutorial we'll start going through the applications of compression. So one thing I want to say before I go, the most important part about compression is knowing when to use it, and same, like I know I said this in the last tutorial, but this is very important. You don't just, this is like more used as a mixing tool rather than a creative tool. So you need to know why you're doing it, and vision why you're putting it on to achieve something. Don't just put it on because you feel like it. This isn't sound design. So yeah, as long as you know why you're doing it, that's the most important part. Because if it doesn't work, if it doesn't work, if your intention doesn't come out the way you thought, then you know not to use it. But if you just keep it on, then you can essentially just ruin the sound. Like if you just put it on for the sake of it. So yeah, I think I'll leave it there, and in the next tutorial we'll start talking about the the different applications of compression and then go through compression and limiting. And then we'll go through expanding and gating in the next tutorials after I've explained this effect. Alright. See you.